First, let's talk about Damontae Kazee's suspension. He has been removed from the Pittsburgh Steelers sideline for the remainder of the season following an ejection on a hit to Michael Pittman Jr. in Week 15 against the Indianapolis Colts. It was his fifth time, or he's been fined for unnecessary roughness 5 times this season, fined a little bit over $59,000. He's now done for the year. He will appeal the suspension, hopefully. At worst case scenario, I feel it's just limited to the remainder of the regular season. Puts the Pittsburgh Steelers in a really critical spot this week as Minkah Fitzpatrick is out with the knee injury. You texted us the other day. You said, hey, we got to make sure we talk about the KZ thing. I got some thoughts. I'm going to open the floor to you. Damontae KZ suspended for the rest of the season. A hit on Michael Pittman Jr. They have mixed thoughts, but everybody seems to be on the side of maybe the NFL went a little bit too far. How you feeling on the situation?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, I looked to you. I thought your take on it was kind of was the thing that kind of drove my opinion and made me the most upset about it. And I think you pointed it out on Twitter was that, look, the NFL is getting real heavy-handed with taking money away from guys who can really ill afford it. I think that's where my mind went first, is that Damontae KZ is not making a ton of money. He's making a lot of money relative to you and I, but yeah. I mean, as far as NFL money goes, it's not that much. I mean, his base salary is, I think, $1.25 million this year. With all the fines that he's racked up this year, including, if he gets suspended, if this thing is upheld, and he's suspended through the end of the year, he's going to lose out on more than $250,000. I think I saw Mark Caboli from The Athletic say it's 22% of his annual salary. That's a lot of money, man. Like, yeah. And you think about how many times Jaylen Warren has been fined this year for just, quite honestly, in my opinion, being short, lowering his helmet. His helmet's already low. He's a short guy. Like, yep. And I feel like the same way about KZ. It's guys who have physical limitations and they are playing football the way that they know how, the way that they have to play football, and they're getting fined for it. And the worst part about it, I think, in my opinion, is that the NFL hands out these suspensions. I think we all saw the letter from the NFL that got posted on Twitter, made the rounds on social media. There's a description of what KZ did wrong, but there are no coaching points. There's no explanation of, in the future you have to do this and you won't get fined. If you play this way, you won't get fined, because, and that's the most infuriating thing to me. It's like, what is Damontae KZ supposed to do in this instance? I understand there's a history with him. I understand he's been flagged before. I understand he's put some bad hits on people before, but as Mike Tomlin said, I don't think any of us believe Damontae KZ is a dirty player. Like, this hit wasn't. I think they have to kind of use some common sense and make a judgment call about intent versus the actual play. Like, was Damontae KZ trying to injure Michael Pittman? I don't think so. Like, Michael Pittman is diving to make an extraordinary catch. Like, he's already low to the ground. I don't know where Damontae KZ is supposed to hit him. I don't know how he's supposed to, in real time, make a play on the ball that is anything other than what he did. And I think that's the worst part about it, is that, I mean, I've said about 3 times that there's the worst part about it to 3 different things. But, like, I mean, I just think it is completely, I understand, a fine. I understand him getting ejected from that game. That makes sense to me. Maybe even if I don't agree with it, I think that makes sense to me. I understand why you gotta prioritize player safety and everything. But, I mean, a suspension for the rest of the regular season seems completely overblown on a play that was, I guess, incidental is the only word that I can come up with. That, like, I just truly don't know what Damontae KZ is supposed to do differently in that situation. And I think there's no accounting for intent, which was pretty clear that he wasn't, trying to hurt anyone. He's trying to make a play on the ball in the only way that he could in that situation. And I feel really awful for him that he gets, because I'm sure he feels bad as well, like putting his team in a bad situation like this. They're down already like 1 million safeties, and he's kind of the only starter competent one that's left on the roster after Minkah Fitzpatrick, or left healthy on the roster after Minkah Fitzpatrick went down. So this just puts a team in a bad situation. It takes a ton of money out of the pocket of a guy who's not trying to do anything malicious, and just feels heavy-handed in every way to me.
Yeah, you're spot on. I agree. That's what the problem with the NFL, with really everybody is. And KZ's agent talked to, I want to say, Josina Anderson afterwards, and said, like, most of these fines have been rescinded. Like the NFL has already said like, hey, look, we're going to take these back, and they do that all the time. Like it's a large chunk. I remember talking to the new president of the NFLPA earlier in the season, and he said, I forget what the number was, but it was well over 50% of these fines actually get removed once they get appealed. And if that's the case, like you can't hold those against anybody. You can't say, oh, well, he's a repeat offender, but we actually acknowledge that he's not a repeat offender. This is the one time. That's the problem here is like the NFL tries to enforce these rules and just kind of lay the hammer down as much as humanly possible. And you made such a good point there. There's nothing to correct it. It's just how much money can we take away from these guys? How much punishment can we lay down for these guys without actually trying to fix it? All we'll say is you have to play safer. You have to do this. We're putting an emphasis on player safety and doing this without actually trying to educate anybody on how to actually play the game of football and right your wrongs. I think that's the biggest issue here is that for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for everybody, they're just sitting around week after week getting hit with these fines, getting hit with these suspensions without having any idea what they're like really doing wrong. Like Jaylen Warren has said it more than once. He's been fined a number of times and he's like, look it, like I just don't know what to do. I'm just playing the game of football. Like you want these guys to play better, take the time, take the money, use the resources to educate them how to play better and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then yeah, you continue to hand the fines out and you continue to do the suspensions and lay the hammer down or whatever you want to say. But just like you said, like how do you expect these? Like you're honestly just looking at it as a way to punish people without actually trying to change the game of football, which has been, I mean, that's been the NFL's MO for a long, long time. This is not the first time they've done any of that. Every time they lay a new rule down that impacts players and players get upset with it and the fans get upset with it, there's no, hey, this is how we should fix it. It's always just like, all right, no more of this. And we will continue to punish you to the maximum extent of the law, the NFL law, until that just, hammers into your brain not to do those things. And I mean, you got everybody going off on the situation. Tom Brady went off on the situation, which, people were laughing at that one, but that was crazy. Like that when every single person could agree that this is an issue, except for the NFL and the NFLPA, it's obviously an issue. The problem is that, I have a really hard time believing that Roger Goodell and the NFLPA and everybody is sitting around scrolling their Twitter timelines and watching YouTube videos and saying, oh man, dude, look at these guys on ESPN. They're upset with us. There's no chance. Like they could care less what we have to say. They're making billions of dollars and they're going to continue to make billions of dollars. And somebody pointed it out under my tweet, actually. They were like, this is how the NFL operates. Like, this is what they do. This is how they continue to become a billion-dollar corporation and own a day of the week and expand the way that they do, because they could care less what you and I think. They could care less what the player does or how much they suffer, as long as their pockets are heavy. And look if that's their business model, it has worked, and you have to acknowledge that it's worked. But at the same time, you have to also acknowledge that they're the enemy. And they continue to prove that they're the enemy and that they're not really here for player safety. They're here to make sure that they're able to enforce the law that they want to enforce and not necessarily explain how that law should be corrected, right. Just about how much they could punish us.
Right. And they have to give the impression that they are concerned about, player safety. Like, yes, exactly. I don't think they're actually very concerned about player safety. I think they want to give the impression that they are concerned about player safety, and that gives them enough cover to let this really violent game keep going on and on and on. Like, either you're comfortable with this game being really violent or you're not. And clearly the NFL doesn't care, but they need to give the impression that they actually do care. And I feel like that's what this really amounts to, is not actually making anything safer, not actually changing this game at all for the better, but just making spectators think that they do actually care about it.
Look at all the lawsuits of retired guys who are dealing with health issues, who are trying to just desperately beg the NFL for any help that they could possibly get. Or look at all the CTE drama that continues to be denied by the game of football. And that's the exact thing. Look at the pension. Look at NFL players' pension. Like, actually sit down and take a look at, for one, how long you have to play this game to get like a decent pension and how crappy that pension actually is. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm pretty sure that like anything under 10 years, I believe it's 5 to 10 years, you're getting like $45,000-$50,000 a year. Like, and I get it. People are going to say, well, that's a lot of players over a lifetime. The NFL makes they make billions of dollars a year. Like it is not put any damper in their pockets. They don't even acknowledge that this is a thing. Roger Goodell's contract includes a private jet for the rest of his life. Okay. Like there's no part of the NFL that is stressing about money. You know, they don't care about the players. They never have cared about the players. That's just part of who the NFL is. I get it. It's a business at the end of the day. I'm kind of glad that, I mean, it sucks, but I am glad that we got to talk about it because I'm glad that it was brought into the realm of the Steelers because it is thoughts that, you know, you don't get to talk about on a daily basis when it's sometimes bigger than the actual game of football. And in this case, it is. And just like you said, KZ's such a good dude, man. Like say KZ's a good guy. He's always super polite and super kind. And he just plays really hard. Like that's just what he does. He's a little dude who's never really he's never been looked at as the guy anywhere. He's always been looked at as somebody who has to work his ass off to get onto the field. And, you know, you play harder when you do that. And you could see a trend like these guys who have to play harder are getting hit with fines because they have to play harder. Like, you know,
that's what I'm saying. It's always the guy. It's guys like Jalen Warren and Demonte KZ. It's not Aaron Donald who's getting these fines. It's not you know, Max Crosby or TJ Watt or Myles Garrett. It's always the little guy getting these fines like this, which I think rubs me the wrong way as well.
Yep, I agree. It's a tough situation. Hopefully we have better updates as the year goes on. But for right now, KZ gone from the Pittsburgh Steelers for the time being, for the rest of the season. Hopefully that doesn't mean the end of his time in Pittsburgh as a whole. But, you know, like I said, we'll get to that hopefully later in the season.